music, turn the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Pun Kelly, get caught in the fake. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor blows the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity where they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Machine Pun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
There we go. Hello. Happy State of the Union address. Hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful State of the Union day. So, can you hear me? Are you? Oh. Are you saying you can't hear me, Patsy? Or she's talking to somebody else? She can't hear me. Can you hear me? Hang on. Let me try this. We're going to reload. Can you hear me now? All right. Let's try this again, people. Happy State of the Union address to you. It's going to be a very wonderful State of the Union day, I'm sure. Interesting. No Twitter. Did I not lose? Why not? I'm only connected to YouTube right now. Why is that? Huh. Well, that's interesting. Anyway, guess we're gonna have a. I don't know. I lost all my feeds except for YouTube. Oh well. So we'll just do it this way. Happy State of the Union. I have a prediction for you, Patsy. You want to hear my prediction about the address tonight? I think Donald Trump is going to say at least one thing that isn't true. Is that a safe bet? Do we have an over/under on the number of lies he will tell today? That is so crazy. Anyway. Hi, Day Lynn Mastrapa. Wonder why. Huh. Let me see something here. See if. Okay, so. See if the. All right. We're getting our other connections back now, I hope. So. There we go. All right. So, man, you pay that much money for stuff, you want it to work. All right. So, today is the State of the Union address. And in a weird sort of turn of events, the Democrats are like, basically, it sounds like they're just mass boycotting or almost mass boycotting the whole thing. And they're having like some sort of alternate event with the an alternate event with the the rebuttal or whatever. And I just got to thinking, Like I was thinking about some of the rebuttals we've seen in the past. Remember, Katie Britt launched 1,000 Saturday Night Live skits. Bobby Jindal, remember that? And Marco Rubio's water problems started there. You're on mute. I can't hear you. It's weird. You're not on mute here. Oh, well. No. We're having all kinds of connections. Maybe refresh your browser and see if that works. So, hey, Gary. So I got to wondering if there's ever been, I guess Al Gore gave a good response in 1982. They were both part of, so that was a group response. I just asked Claude about
Oh,
Have you ever heard of, you know how the rebuttals, they never
Mhm.
go well, right? You know, and remember Bobby Jindal,
mm-hmm.
that disaster, and then Marco Rubio, that's when
Mm-hmm.
the drinking problem started. And Katie Britt, the skits. It's like I started calling her Britt the Skit after that because it was just her name be like, who was the person who did her like better than her?
ScarJo.
I mean, yes, that's it.
Mhm.
Scarlett Johansson. She
Uh-huh.
she did it so perfectly.
well.
Like,
So well.
I mean,
Ah!
and I'm just like, why would anybody even want to do that? And so now the Democrats have their thing. So I asked, so you know who gave a good rebuttal? That maybe helped his career a little bit? Bill Clinton.
Oh.
Bill Clinton's probably the last person that gave a rebuttal that actually resonated. So he was like they're doing tonight with a group response.
Mm-hmm.
Part of a group response in 1985.
Wow. Yeah, they're doing the People's State of the Union. Midas is hosting. Move On is part of it. There's all sorts of stuff. I'm going to do live skeeting of the chat, of the speech.
I think Stephanie, what's her name? The one that used to be part of the Trump media team.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to be doing a live rebuttal with what you're talking about with the Midas Network stuff. So anyway,
I think it'll be fun. I always remember MTG and Laura Boebert, Lauren Boebert.
Yeah.
When they were doing the R, you know.
And Mike Johnson was just complaining about how the Republicans would never do this, and it's like, but you like literally did do this, you know. So yeah, that kind of takes the whole would never do this thing to anyway. Got a few comments here. Gary says, "What's up? How are you today?" We're doing good, Gary. Thanks for asking. Hey, Nick Wielden says, "Horn. Is that a horn or something?"
No sound, no sound. He can't hear you. See, that was when we were having our technical difficulties.
Al Gore invented the internet. Oh, did you?
I remember that.
Do you know the truth behind that? He actually never said he invented the internet.
I know that.
But what he did say, you know, you would not believe who came to his defense on this.
Who?
This is where I learned about it. The last person on earth who was like when you think about people that were opposed to the Clintons, and when Gore was president or when Gore was vice president, who was the biggest opposition to the Clintons?
The Republicans.
And who was the chief Republican?
Kenneth Starr? No, Newt Gingrich.
Newt Gingrich is the one that actually.
I should get extra points for that today.
Yes. So Newt Gingrich. So what it is you probably know this, but the internet was originally, it was a military software. It was for military to be able to have their computers connect together. So like when I was in the Air Force in 1988, I think, was it 88, 87 around? We got our first emails. It was just like to use in the hospital. Like long before most people even heard of it. It started off the whole internet thing, networking computers together and all that stuff. That was originally military software. Then Al Gore, along with some other people, came up with the idea of using that and then building on it to make it public so that it could become, and Al Gore even would talk about how it become a place where you can buy and sell things online and stuff like that.
Wow.
So he drafted the legislation. He wrote the legislation that actually made the internet happen.
I didn't know that.
He did not invent the internet, but he
kind of did.
He did draft legislation that made it possible. So it's like people say that like he's, like it's something preposterous, and it's actually true. And then when you think about the 90s and what really made the economy grow is the internet. So Al Gore actually deserves a lot of credit for the internet. And people use this, Al Gore invented the internet, like they use it like it's a snide thing, but it's actually true. And Newt Gingrich, of all people, Newt Gingrich is the one that defends him on it. So isn't that a crazy thing?
It is. I blame Newt for some of the chaos we have now, the trashiness of politics, much more so.
What is that? This is what I think of when I think of Newt Gingrich.
A troll with pustules, syphilitic pustules all over it?
No. I'm gonna pop it up. You gotta
a leprechaun with no pot of gold with nasty syphilitic pustules all over it?
Close. I mean, that works too, but here, I just need to let me present. This is what I think of. Newt Gingrich. It's an actual newt. A lizard. Like a newt.
That's much cuter than what I envisioned.
It is a little cute to be Newt Gingrich.
It's cute. That's
but I think it might be too smart to be Newt Gingrich too.
I think it probably is offended by you now, and you're going to end up with little newts eating your toes at night.
Gary says there's more than enough blame to go around everybody.
That's fair.
That's fair. But some people get more than others. And Newt Gingrich was kind of a dick, and he's become more of a dick. He's definitely a dick.
I would use a different word, probably one I would similarly use for Andrew, the former prince. Andrew.
Sure. So Gary, I'm gonna just shoot through a couple of things, but the main focus is going to be on media bias. I think Gary wants me to hustle along here and get to the meat, Kelly.
He doesn't care about the rest of us. Okay. No more small talk. Doesn't need lubrication. Just raw dog right in there.
So before I go into the main thing, I did want to talk a little tiny bit about a couple of other things. One other thing. This story that even Kitty was too busy wrapped up in the Epstein stuff to hear about the new Epstein stuff. And there's a new story out where there was the Trump administration buried some allegation stuff about him in their release of the Epstein files. And apparently in 1983, there was this girl that was 13 years old that she says Trump. So here, I'll share with you my screen. This is kind of a, whoops. Okay. Should have made tacos today.
Tacos. It is Taco Tuesday.
And guess who's, I mean, is there a connection?
I know. I went there too.
Taco State of the Union Day or something.
I love that.
Okay, is this the one? All right, so today the NPR and along with MSNBC has corroborated this. Based on what NPR's investigation today revealed today, the FBI intentionally circulated Epstein-related allegations that are that Trump that mentioned Trump in late July and early August 2025. The lead was included in an internal PowerPoint slide deck detailing prominent names in the Epstein and Maxwell investigations last fall, meaning fall of 2025. And crucially, the FBI interviewed this accuser 4 times. So this, oh, whoops. I'm sorry. This is like I had this whole conversation trying to figure out what's going on. Do you ever have conversations with AI?
All the time.
I think AI is designed to cultivate friendships with us.
To suck us in.
Yeah. Doesn't AI always say nice things to you?
Yes. I'm not always nice to it, though.
Okay. All right. Well, I can't find that, so I'm not gonna. But basically, this 13-year-old, this girl that was 13 at the time, in 1983, Epstein introduced her to Donald Trump, who then forced her to perform oral sex on him. And then she accidentally bit and he slapped her, and he did this indication, or, like the whole thing was part of a pattern. That, you see the same thing with Katie Johnson, who was the woman who, made the lawsuit in 2016, but then withdrew it. It was never ruled on by the merits. Some people act like that thing got thrown out of court or something. No, she withdrew it because she was getting death threats. At least that's what her lawyer says. Which, I think he's probably got some more reason to know about it than standard trolls on the internet. So anyway, the more you see these women that have nothing to do with each other tell very, very similar stories, like this girl from 1983 and Katie Johnson, their stories sound really similar. And the other thing that's really interesting about this news story is the FBI did 4 follow-up interviews. And they don't necessarily follow up everything. A lot of things they didn't follow up. But you don't follow up 4 times if you don't think there's something there. And so they didn't just bury the whole thing from, buried the allegation in the report. They also buried all the FBI reports and stuff like that. So what did the FBI see that they thought this was worth following up repeatedly on? And what happened that they decided to stop following up on it? What was the whole thought process behind all that? Even there's certainly reason to believe it's true, right? But even if it weren't true, there's a lot to going into the thinking pattern of the FBI, and just in terms of the victims and understanding what's happening with the victims, with the FBI pursuit of things. why didn't the victims get justice? We could find out a lot just from seeing that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, why did you stop? Like, why did you stop in this case? Why did you stop in all these cases? This is a really, I think, fascinating thing that, and this is definitely not, I don't think this is one of those things where you can say, well, that's just an an unverified report. You know, like some of the things they've written off as well. That somebody just can call in and just say that, and I mean, it's true. It doesn't mean that that's all that happened, but it is true that somebody could just call in and make claims. This is obviously not that. This one that had 4 FBI follow-up conversations. That means something. So this is another case. This could be another case of it's the cover-up that gets you. Of course, when you're talking about forcing, when you're talking about raping children, the cover-up isn't what gets you. It's the raping children part that gets you. So Gary says, no, I just wondered. Okay, so he wasn't putting pressure on us to get going. I think Gary sometimes Gary's the one that gets mad at me if I get too caught up in the comments and get dragged down and I'm like 15 minutes behind. And he's got a point. I'm trying, Gary. You're talking about an FBI. Kitty's been helping me. She's been kicking out the weirdos. You're talking about an FBI report that was made. Yeah, we don't know that it was found to be false, Kevin. That's part of the problem. We don't know what the results were. They buried the entire report. So I'm talking about an FBI report that was buried completely. It wasn't investigated and found to be false. We don't know that it was found to be false. It may have been found to be false. But the report itself should be in the Epstein files. It should be in the release, whether it was found to be false or not. The fact it's not in the files is a violation of the law. No, this is a new thing, Kevin, that just broke today. You might be confusing it with something else. These are new allegations that NPR released and MSNBC corroborated. If Trump did something wrong, he needs to pay for it. But so anybody that raped children should go to jail. I've been consistent on this. Patsy 100% agrees with me. Patsy doesn't even get too involved in the Trump part of it. She's on her whole thing is help the victims. To me, and that's what this whole thing is about. It's about the victims. Okay, so you're the no, that's not the question. Because we know the answer to that, which I've addressed before. The answer to that is Joe Biden never consciously buried it, and it's not exactly the same thing because the allegations weren't about Joe Biden and there wasn't a law passed that Joe Biden had to release them. And then Joe Biden didn't actively suppress them. So it doesn't really work with the tit for tat there. List of perpetrators is long. Everybody that raped children should go to jail. Everybody that assisted in raping children should go to jail. So, that's what the thing I want to bring it out about that is just more and more there is a consistency of these stories between people that had no idea about each other's stories. So it gets harder and harder to just dismiss it as they just made it up when you have a pattern, an MO, if you will, that starts to develop from all of these different girls. If they all keep saying the same story, it makes you start believing there may be some reality to that story. Period. Good comment. Took me a second, but see, period. That's a good comment. All right. So then there's this whole thing about the men's and women's hockey team where yesterday my wife was saying that she thought maybe people were being a little bit unfair to Trump because he made this comment about the women's hockey team. He told the men's hockey team that You know, he's sorry the women's team would have to be there too, or something like that. Made some kind of disparaging mark about, and it was a joke, but it was a disparaging joke. And I just feel like anybody else said that, any other president said that, we would just immediately just go like, that is what, why do you have to make this misogynistic joke about it? With Trump, we're like, well, you know, that's on the grand scheme of things that he said. That's not the worst. He said so much worse things that it's okay for him to just toss about a little misogynistic humor here and there. Okay, again, I don't, until you, all I'm saying, Kevin, is this is a new allegation. You have not read the thing. You don't know what it is. You haven't read about it. So probably should check on your facts before you start repeating them. Tough censorship in here. I had written, oh, that was an actual sentence, not a joke. There's not that much censorship that goes on. I have a standard censorship thing, and then there's one word that I hate, and so I just have that one word, and that is the word illegal being used as a noun in the plural form. I don't consider people illegal, and I don't consider dehumanizing a thing. But other than that, I just have the standard YouTube censors or filters on. Yeah. The point is not like seems like you want to go into this one claim that you haven't even read about. But the point, Kevin, the point is not whether the claims are true or not. The point, Kevin, is that the claims were not in the release of the files as they were required to be by law. Do you agree that the President of the United States should follow the law? Do you agree that the Attorney General should follow the law? The question here is about the law and whether it was followed, Kevin. Keep up, keep up. You got a Jeep there. You can drive it. Okay, my favorite story is the one with the hospital ship to Greenland. I haven't heard about that one. I do not like fixate on all of this because I you know, but this story seemed to get traction for a reason, and I think part of the reason is it was buried. Like all the other stuff came out before. Why was this specific story buried? Why did Donald Trump or his attorney general or whoever it was, why did they not include that in the release? And you can understand then, right? Why we think there might be other things in the 2.5 million unreleased files that also don't vindicate Trump. Trump needs to hold no more press conferences, and he shouldn't say anything in public until he's out of office. There would be some humor to that. I wonder if he's going to take a nap during this State of the Union tonight. Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about, Kevin. But again, this is not this was not part of the release. That's why it's news. I tried to write something 5 times and it wasn't illegal. It must be okay. Yeah, I only have the one. I personally entered that word. That's it. Okay, but that's not relevant, Kevin. Okay.
It's not me also. I haven't removed or deleted any comments today yet.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Just getting the period. Like I thought he was making a joke. Like
I thought so too. I thought it was hilarious. So, you know,
for
passive comedy.
For you know, if you committed, you know, if you rape children, you should go to jail. Period. Actually, I'm going to use that in the future. Uh-oh. I don't know what I did. I'm sorry.
I press buttons.
I believe everybody in power should do the right thing and do what they're supposed to do. But that is not going to happen very often. No, it is not. And, oh, did you mute yourself? Okay. Let's do this. There we go. I don't know what post I don't have any idea. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what that is all about. So anyway, that was, I just wanted to talk about those few things before I started going into today's show. And I want to talk about the whole idea of media bias. And I got this because, all right, so here we go. All right. You hear a lot about the media is biased, right? Like, but what does that mean? And especially you'll hear the media bias, the liberal media. Usually when you hear about biased media, you're talking about the mainstream media and the liberal bias in the mainstream media, and not about the obvious bias in like Fox News or OAN. You know, somehow those things never get equated with media bias because they're so over the top bias. I think, you know, that people don't feel like they need to consider those the things, even though those are the things that they watch to avoid watching the biased media. So, you know, it's like, I think if you're a sports fan, are you a sports fan, Kitty? You know, so let's say you're a sports fan in Seattle. I wrote about basketball for 15 years. So, you know, I've got some experience in this. And when I lived in Chicago and I wrote about the Bulls, then I would be accused of a Bulls bias. You're just biased for the Bulls. And I would also be biased against all the other teams. And then I moved to, you know, Texas, and I started covering the Rockets. And then I had a Rockets bias, and I was biased against all the other teams. You know, it's just because that was the team I wrote about, I must be biased. And I think that the word bias, we need to understand what the word bias means. Bias means like an unfair slant. It doesn't mean that you just have an opinion. And so, like, I was thinking of a good example is, let's say the topic is slavery. And so we got this idea, right? That somewhere in the middle is what matters, right? That you're not biased if you're in the middle. And so let's talk about the topic of slavery. And you say, okay, I'm against slavery. And then you'd have somebody say, no, I'm for slavery. And then you'd have the center come in and say, I'm for indentured servitude. You know, and it's like that's somewhere in the middle between slavery and not slavery. And I'm using this as an example, not because some smear against the right, because I think that probably everybody listening and or watching is against slavery. I'm using it because it's an obvious example of there not being a middle, or there not being a bias that's, you know, you don't have a anti-slavery bias. You just have an anti-slavery opinion. And so you can have like an informed opinion about something. That doesn't make it a bias. What makes something a bias is if it's an unfair thing. It's unfair if you set your opinion in stone before you ever learn what the facts are. You know, if you're on a jury trial and you decide the guy is guilty or innocent before the lawyers ever spoke a word, that's biased. If you decide that the person is innocent or guilty after both sides have presented all their cases, that's just an informed opinion. And I think sometimes we take bias and informed opinion and we kind of lump them together into the same thing. So then we just say it's a left bias or a right bias. If your informed opinion is conservative, you don't have a right bias. If your informed opinion is left bias, is left, that's not a bias. What's a bias is just, I believe a certain thing, I will stay this way no matter what. I don't care what the facts are. Setting aside the facts is a bias. And setting aside the facts, if you're a news network, that is a bias. So let's talk about the difference. You know, you have your MSNBC, so-called liberal media. They're different. There's a scale here, right? MSNBC, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, NPR, all of those are accused of being liberal media. NPR is not liberal. MSNBC is liberal. On the right, you have Fox News, Breitbart, the New York Post, the Daily Caller, and OAN. But like Fox News is not the opposite of MSNBC. And we'll get into all of that, what all of that means, and why I think we need to be really careful before we talk about media bias or, well, what about CNN? I don't even watch CNN. I don't like CNN. So the way I wanted to talk about this, I thought about this. There was a lawsuit against Rachel Maddow. OAN sued Rachel Maddow for defamation. And Karen McDougal sued Tucker Carlson for defamation. And in a lot of ways, if you look at it on the surface, there's a similarity. With Rachel Maddow's lawsuit, it got thrown out of court because they said, you know, well, she's a media pundit. Nobody expects her to be, you know, like people know that she's going to give opinions. And so the judge threw it out of court without ever hearing the merits. McDougal versus Carlson, they said, well, nobody watches Fox News. Nobody watches this show to actually get informed. This is an entertainment. The actual legal defense presented by Tucker Carlson is he's not really a news show. He's an entertainment show. So no reasonable person is watching Fox News to be informed of things. So somebody could look at, you know, and then they say, see, they're both just saying what they think. They both are just saying their opinions. They both got sued for saying something wrong. And in both cases, it got thrown out of court. So you could look at it on a surface level and think that these things are equivalent. But let's peel back the onion a little bit. Okay. Sorry, we got some. Okay, I voted for Trump, but I knew all along that what came with rhetoric, and I'm getting tired of the rhetoric now. Just passing through. Enjoy that. Hey, Salty, how you doing? They just want to keep us fighting against each other so they can keep their machine running. Yes, they do. All of this corruption and evil, vile behavior has went on for years in Washington, and now it needs to get cleaned out. I agree. Can we all agree that there's a lot of evil in Congress and it's all screwed up there? Yes. Bias in media goes on every day, all day long. FBI investigate. Yeah, so Kevin's just repeating the same thing over. The point is, like, I'm not going to get into a debate with you about that because it doesn't matter. What matters is that it wasn't released in the Epstein files. Why aren't they following the law? That is the important part. So let's take a look at this. So they were both sued. OAN sued Moto over defamation. Karen McDougal sued Carlson for defamation. They were both dismissed. Both cases were dismissed by federal judges on similar grounds. And both courts found reasonable viewers understand these are opinion programs, not straight news. So if you this feeds the whole they're opposite sides of the same kind of bias. Tucker Carlson's audience is biased. Tucker Carlson is biased. Rachel Maddow's audience is biased. Rachel Maddow is biased. But what Rachel Maddow was sued for and what Tucker Carlson was sued for are very different things. And that is the, first thing we need to consider. What Rachel Maddow said is OAN really, literally is paid Russian propaganda. And she framed it explicitly as her opinion during an opinion segment on an opinion show with her characteristic editorializing delivery that her audience recognizes. And she was reporting that, or she was basing that opinion on a news article that she was reading that was accurate. What she was saying was actually true. One big thing about that, you can't lose a defamation case for saying something true. It's kind of a big killer on a defamation case. But it got thrown out of court. OAN reporter, the Factual Foundation OAN reporter Kristen Rouse simultaneously wrote for Sputnik, the Kremlin-owned state media. Rouse reported on U.S. politics for OAN without disclosing his Kremlin affiliation. OAN's cease and desist letter did not dispute the central premise. Even OAN didn't challenge them on the facts because she was right. And hang on. Rose's OAN segments included Kremlin talking points and fabricated claims. So Maddow won her anti-SLAPP, but she would have, if the court had not, if the judge had not thrown it out of court, she would have won on the merits. So that's kind of a big difference. What she said was actually true. It's hard to like talk about an unfair bias if you're talking about something that's true. Then this is, and she presented that, remember, she presented that as an opinion, and she said she was presenting it as an opinion. On the other hand, Tucker Carlson, what he said on air was, remember the facts of the story. These are undisputed. Then he described McDougal's conduct as classic extortion, a characterization that was factually wrong. Cohen's guilty plea established the payment was a willing transaction. So what Tucker Carlson said was the opposite of what Rachel Maddow said, in the sense that what Rachel Maddow said was true. What Tucker Carlson said was fiction. What Rachel Maddow presented was an opinion. What Tucker Carlson did is present his fiction as facts. So then Fox legal defense was, it's a commentary show. No reasonable viewer would take his undisputed facts as actual facts. The judge agreed. Carlson's explicit claim of undisputed facts was ruled rhetorical hyperbole because the surrounding show context overrode his own words. In other words, everything he said was so ridiculous and insane that no reasonable person would take that show as being a news show. So the result won on nobody believes Tucker defense. But he got tossed out because nobody would believe Tucker. If that one had actually gone on the merits, he probably would have lost because he said something that wasn't true. And because he knew it wasn't true, and because he actually did, it would seem, intend to inflict harm, although that might have been the hardest part of it to prove. But considering his whole history and pattern of trying to take down everybody that disagreed with Trump, it's probable that that's what happened. So MSNBC's defense was, everybody knows, Maddow gives her opinion on verified news reporting. Her audience understands she analyzes in editorials on real documented reporting. The factual substance is checkable. Opinion is clearly signaled by delivery. So, in other words, she did opinions, you know, and she said it was opinions, but she based her opinions on facts. So that's why I think it's really important when I say you have to understand there's a difference between having an opinion and having a bias. Having an opinion based on facts is not a bias. Fox News defense is everyone knows Carlson's statements aren't meant to be taken as facts. His audience understands he is performing, not editorializing on facts, but making statements that his own employer argues nobody should literally believe. So this is bias. Bias is just making up the facts to conform to your opinion when the facts don't do that. So MSNBC and Fox News are not two sides of the same coin. It's not a difference of degree, it's a difference of kind. Maddow's was opinion from a real documented reporting, factual foundation, solid and uncontested, not even by the defense. Even OAN admitted that what she said was true. Well, at least didn't challenge the truth of what she said. Opinion clearly signaled by delivery. We would have won on the merits. Carlson labeled his false claims as undisputed facts. He lied. Employer argued nobody should believe him because he lies. Fox marketed him as a most trusted anchor because he said what people wanted to hear. We'll get into that more later. And he would have lost on the merits. Both sides get sued is not a fact. It's the bias. It's using this correlation without looking at the distinction. So a leaning is a perspective or orientation that shapes how you see things. Every journalist has a worldview. A reporter who grew up in rural poverty notices things a wealthy reporter misses. That's a leaning. It informs what questions get asked directly. So you can have two equally credible reporters cover the same thing and get different stories because they have their own separate life that they bring to it. They have their own separate insights that they bring to it. That doesn't make one biased or not biased. And a leaning is fair. It's okay to have opinions. It's okay to share opinions, provided they are based on actual facts and substance. And how well vetted those facts are, how well you take into consideration all of the facts and not cherry pick facts, all of those kinds of things make things something more or less credible. A bias is unfair. Bias is the distortion where learning actively compromises accuracy, fairness, or completeness. So when you start having to say things that aren't true to confirm your bias, that's just bias. You're not just seeing from the perspective, you're filtering, shading, or suppressing information to serve that perspective. One way I can, one way I think of understanding this, again, back to the basketball analogy, since it's a little easier to wrap your head around than the political idea. But back when I was, after I'd been writing NBA for a few years, I started editing, and I would, kind of mentor some younger writers, and I would always tell them, if you always write the story you set out to write, you're not doing a very good job. Because if you always write what you intend to write, then you're never learning anything. Like most of the times I wrote an article, I would do a lot of research. And in the research, I would actually learn things and I would refine my opinion. One time, I even wrote the opposite article that I thought I was going to write, because as I was investigating, as I was researching, I learned, and then that learning brought me to an opposite viewpoint of what I initially had. So that's the difference between having a leaning and having a bias. Is if you have a leaning, you're learning. And if you have a bias, you're just reinforcing your own opinion all the time. Okay, so that's the first aspect. And so I'm going to go through and look at some comments. Are you implying that Tucker wasn't trying to cause harm? But I'm implying that Tucker, yeah, I'm not implying that. I'm implicitly stating it. Tucker was trying to cause harm. And Maddow was not trying to cause harm. I hope that clears things up. Okay. She said it was her opinion. Yeah, she did. And OAN was Russian propaganda. Like, you're missing that part of it. She was reading a news article that revealed there was this guy that was literally a Russian propagandist that worked for OAN. And then she laughed and said, OAN is literally Russian propaganda. When you have Russian propagandists working for your network, you can be fairly defined as Russian propaganda. Yes, because it was literally Russian propaganda. See, this is what I'm saying. That might seem extreme, but the fact it's true makes it a leaning and not a bias. News media, the fourth wing of government. You can thank Google for that. The Google AI, they have this slides thing, and they make I put up crappy slide decks, and then I click this beautify it link, and it makes these like really awesome looking slides. I don't care if you would have lost. I don't care if she won. That's it, history. No, but we're not talking about those cases. We're talking about those cases in the perspective of media bias. You can't be biased. Well, I mean, you can have a leaning, but bias means unfair. And if you're being fair by presenting facts to support your opinion, then it's not a bias. It's just a leaning. No offense intended. Oh, no. What specific? This was all ruled as legal. Yeah, that's not really the question here. I'm not saying that the courts did anything wrong. I'm just saying they aren't the same thing. Rachel Maddow said something true, and Tucker Carlson said something false. Okay, everything you say has to be fair, like if you're a lawyer, because it will be scrutinized from daylight to dusk. And I think that what happened is that now we've gotten to a point where people can't distinguish between truth and something that goes against their bias. Like, sometimes it's not the presentation that's biased. It's the person who receives the presentation that's biased. So if you are biased and then somebody presents to you evidence that proves your bias is wrong, then you can just lash out and say that they're biased. You got this knee-jerk response to anything that you disagree with. Not you, Gary. I just mean like the royal you. Just determine that anything you disagree with must be biased, because you can't be biased, right? So it's got to be the other thing that's biased. If you need to talk like a lawyer, I don't trust you automatically. What's the old joke? What do you call a busload of lawyers with an empty seat going off a cliff? I'm crying shame about that one empty seat. You can, you can say anything and turn it, and you don't like that one. Patsy does like that one. You can say anything and turn it around and say you meant to say something else, like a dog. So that's actually a good point. That's what we call a backhanded compliment. That's you just actually made a good point. Thank you. Appreciate that, Clark. Yes, mister, I don't pay attention to 90% of it every day. It's all poison. All right. So it's not her opinion. It was Russia. Yeah, I mean, it really wasn't her opinion. There was a news article. I can't remember who wrote the news article. She was reading the news article on the network, on her show. She was reading it and she was highlighting. And there was a guy that literally was a Russian propagandist that wrote for, what was the, let's go back. So the factual foundation, let's go back and read this again. OAN reporter Christian Ruse simultaneously wrote for Sputnik, a Kremlin-owned state media. Ruse reported on U.S. politics for OAN without disclosing his Kremlin affiliation. OAN's cease and desist letter did not dispute the central premise. So she was reading this breaking news about this Ruse guy who was literally a Russian propagandist. Like, he got paid by Sputnik, the Russian propaganda news network. And he also got paid by OAN. So they literally had a Russian propagandist working for them. And it was in that context that she said what she said. So that's not an opinion. That is a fact that she was like, when she said that, she was being literally true. Okay, where'd I? Just because a single author at OAN. But that's semantics. Just because a single author at OAN is a Russian propagandist might not necessarily mean that I don't think she necessarily, just because she said it in that context. It's not like she said that and then, smeared everybody else with it. But they were literally getting money from, they were literally paying a Russian propagandist money. So neither say, this is totally different than Tucker Carlson saying, I've got facts, and then says things that are legitimately not facts, and he legitimately knows they are not facts. See, I want to try to get away from the sides here, because to me, the sides here are not left or right, or Fox News or MSNBC. What I'm trying to distinguish here is between leaning and bias. I don't have problems with Politico, I think. There are some right-leaning news organizations that still are grounded in facts, and they interpret what they see based on those facts. I don't have a problem with those kind of things. I don't have a problem with somebody that disagrees with me and presents a different opinion, as long as those things are presented, as long as they stay grounded in facts. Fox News does not stay grounded in facts. That's my issue. It's like, oh man, what do we owe? How about cut spending? LOL. Well, that's not as simple as that. Not enough people argue in good faith. I agree with that. It won't let me give you, and I can't. Sorry, it's again the issue. You're still stuck on the Epstein thing. We've moved on. No offense, but this is how actually helping How is this? I'm just hoping to help you think and work through the process. We'll go on some more, because what I think we need to do is stop blaming. We need to reevaluate how our political brains function, and we need to look at what things are true as the baseline. Like, instead of looking at bias in the media, there's different kinds of bias, and we need to recognize those kinds of bias. It's not about left versus right. It's about, the first distinction is leaning versus bias. I do not have a problem with any media leaning one direction or the other. There's a left-wing site that pumps out a lot of hyperbolic and fake stuff too. Daily something or other. Do you know the one I'm talking about, Patsy? Like, there's one like Daily something, I think it's called. Anyway, there's some left-wing sites that I have no regard for, because they just pump out a bunch of nonsense to get clicks. Just because A equals B and B equals C does not mean A equals C, right? That's called, I think it's called an association bias, or association fallacy. Libertarians are the only small, but I'll say they are. I disagree with, like, I think small government is stupid. That's my opinion. I don't have a problem with small government, but I will agree that libertarians, at least for the most part, are consistent with what they believe. Like, you get some conservatives that are supporting Trump, and I'm like, so are you a Trump supporter or are you a conservative? Those two things do not coincide. Same thing with the libertarian Trump supporters. Like, Trump is mutually distinguishable from the libertarians. There are a lot of things. Trump is more big government than Biden in a lot of ways. Also, this is all, Kevin, I'm going to try this one more time. The issue is about whether or not Pam Bondi released all of the Epstein files. The issue is not about Trump. I'm not sure if I believe in absolute truth, especially in politics. Everything, including statistics and polls, are skewed towards opinion. And same thing with basketball. So the thing is to not try. And I appreciate how you frame that, because this is actually, I think, something we can agree on, is it shouldn't be how we present things. It should be how we try to understand things, right? We should look at we should look at the statistics. We should look at the polls, maybe less the polls than the statistics. But we should look at things to try to understand them before we look at trying to present them. Like, we should pretend, or we should present what we understand rather than present what we want to present. It goes back to the article idea I was talking about. If you are honest with yourself, forget about being honest with anybody else. But if you're being honest with yourself, sometimes you will change your mind. That's what in the olden days we used to call learning. Okay, whenever you want to join the conversation, Kevin. All right, I'll let you take care of that one, Kitty. I prefer simple street talk. Show me who you hang with, and I'll show you who you are. I will never forgive Trump for PPP loans and stimmy checks. So you are a true libertarian. Most statistics come from research studies that are done at colleges with research grants. Well, where would you prefer they come from? Like, all studies are done by somebody, and all studies are paid for by somebody. So by your logic, all studies have an inherent bias, based on whoever is funding it. So I think this is where, bias, we need to learn about the difference. Like, this is where we need to distinguish between what bias actually means and what it doesn't actually mean. Does that mean that all studies are inherently unfair? Like, then you're talking about, like, the process of studying is inherently unfair. Bias is unfair. Bias means unfair. You can have a leaning, you can have an opinion that is totally fair to have. Okay. So now the next thing is, want to talk about the whole. The next thing we talk about is when it comes to bias. And I think for this one, rather than MSNBC, I'd like to present CNN as a counterexample. There is just a sensationalism bias. Like, it's not so much I want the left side of the story or I want the right side of the story. It's I want the side of the story that's going to get me the most clicks, get me the most reads, get me the most views, get my videos the most watches, because that's going to make me the most money. All that ad revenue comes by clicks. I remember, like, what it was a frustrating thing back, when I wrote for Bleacher Report. I would spend 3 days working on an article, like inventing my own statistic, and like just really diving in to try to understand something from a level that nobody had ever discussed before. Like, I invented my own statistic for assists, because like sometimes people will can just pass the ball to somebody. They like to catch the ball and they pass it to an open guy, and the open guy takes the shot and they make it. And they were just there as part of a play, and so they get an assist for that. Then you got somebody like James Harden or somebody like that would dribble the ball for a couple of minutes, pull defenders away from a shooter, and then when that shooter came over to collapse on the dribbler, they'd pass to the shooter that was open because of the work that the dribbler did. And a lot of the so-called super point guards, like Steph Curry, has this a lot. Their assists come from, they actually generated the shot that they assisted, not the play. And so I thought, well, we should have a way to look at this. So I figured out some statistics to ascertain who are really the best passers versus who are the people that get the most assists. So anyway, I did this big article on this. It took me a couple of weeks to figure it all out. Ran all these spread tables, and I had these fancy graphs and all this kind of stuff. And it was really cool. I was really proud of this article. And it did okay. It got a few 100,000 reads. But then the same day I got by the news desk, I got assigned this article about Tony Parker having an affair on his wife or something. I can't remember what it was. And it was like a 500-word article, maybe not even that long. And it took me about 20 minutes to write it. And that article got more reads than any article that I had ever written. And it was junk journalism that I hated doing. I hated myself for even writing it. And, but that's what my job was. And it got all the clicks. My point is, I'm rambling, but my point is that sometimes people, like, the people that are paying for things are looking to make money. Like the owner of Bleacher Report wanted to make money off of the clicks. So the things that got the most clicks are the things that got pushed the most. Things that took the most research, had the most understanding, got buried by the things that got the most clicks. And that's where we're at with our news media. All you see is clickbait. First is best. You know, you get all these you get all the hundreds of spins and takes and spit takes on, you know, every time there's a mass shooter, you know, the right wing has to come out with how he's, you know, trans. She's a trans girl, even though like it almost never ends up being true. And as though it's relevant whether she is or not. There's the right wing. They spin all this stuff. CNN has their own discussions. And everybody's rushing to be first on this. It's all about getting clicks. Because clicks make money. And sometimes that goes beyond that. Sometimes, and I just want to use the 2020 election as an example here. The 2020 election, the Fox News had to pay a lot of money because they just lied. But why did they lie? Because they had an audience that they had to satiate. It's about the money, not the news. Sometimes it's not about the conservative bias or the liberal bias or the learning bias. It's just about the business bias. So, all right. It's a good question. How do we get to the truth? And that is honestly research, read. I mean, ask questions and then question your answers. That's my thing that I try to do is I always try to, like, I don't just take the first answer. I say, okay, if I didn't agree with this, how would I challenge that? You know, if I've, you know, I challenge all my own opinions by what if I didn't agree with me? How would I tear apart my own argument? And sometimes I convince myself I'm wrong. Plenty of bias goes on in the world today. Plenty of bias does go on in the world today. That is for sure. Kelly, hey, it's my buddy Dusty. Back in the day when I grew up, I remember that. Now it's called, you ever tried to get Grok to say the word lie? It is like, man, he's like, well, I don't know if that's a lie. That's just a mischaracterization of reality or something like that. He tries to find so many ways to not say lie, especially if he's defending something a right-winger said. Great. I've unsubscribed from several YouTubers because their chyrons are clickbait and then they yammer for 20 minutes to show us a 10-second clip. Oh, yeah. It's like, you cook, Brett? Like when you get to those recipe articles and they like go through a 45-minute process of telling you the history of the entire food and how they, you know, like had to go through, you know, Costco to get the flour, and like by the time, I mean, it's like this huge article, like 2,000-word article, and all you want is just show me the stupid recipe. One thing I'll note, Gary, is that being alive is a bias in itself. Every single thing you interact with has a bias. And this is where I'm trying to sway us away from using the word bias. Bias is something unfair. Life experience is going to give you a leaning. Life experience is going to give you a perspective. But that doesn't mean it's a bias. It just means that's your life experience. That's like, you know, having Justice Jackson Brown. She has a perspective that nobody else on that court has. Not just as a black woman, but also as a defense prosecutor or a defense attorney. I think she's the first defense attorney in the history of the Supreme Court. So she has a unique perspective. It's not always about bias. Sometimes it's just about perspective. And you're right that everything that we do, everything we interact with, every place we've been, where we grew up, all of that stuff gives us our own unique perspective. Chiron, apologies, voice to text. I figured it out. My mechanism for staying more positive is not to watch any of the news. That's probably not a bad idea. I had to recharge myself this weekend, and I did so largely by avoiding the news. By the way, man, if you guys haven't watched the Night of the Seven Kingdoms, that's a good show. It's the whole thing's up, so if you can watch, if you want to marathon the whole thing, you can. I genuinely have been trying to curate my feed to smaller channels and professors that have been scruggly. I just recorded my school lecture vibe. Scruggly. I don't know that word. What does that mean? Is that a typo or a word? Scruggly. I like the sound of it. If it's not a word, it should be. Just because. Internet slang for a character or creature that is disheveled, messy, or scruffy, yet still considered. Oh, am I scruggly? Do I have the scruggly vibe? I have the beard. But I don't know if that's scraggly. I do try to trim it every once in a while. Okay. Show biased in mainstream media. I don't know what you're talking about. If you type HTTP cooked wiki before a recipe on the internet. What I've taken to doing is if I find a recipe that looks good, I'll just paste it in the Claude and I'll just say, just show me this recipe. Scrungly. Maybe a little, I like that word, scrungly. Maybe I should call myself Scrungly Pun Scletta. Or Machine Scrungly Scletta. Nah, pun works better. All right, so let's go back to here. So what happened with Fox News and their business decision? Back in 2020, you may remember that there were some allegations about the election that were made. The Fox News called Arizona correctly, right? And so then when that happened, all their viewers ran to Newsmax. You know, they're like, oh, if you're going to start reporting reality instead of just what we want to hear, we're not going to watch you anymore. And so then internally, they started talking about, they were talking about Donald Trump's claims as being nuts. Tucker Carlson's producer referred to referred to them as a bunch of cousin fornicators, except he didn't say fornicators. So then they started broadcasting the claims anyway. They knew they were wrong. They knew these claims were bogus. They knew they were nonsense. They knew they were made up. They knew that Trump was lying, but they continued broadcasting them because it was a business decision. Oh, whoops. All right. So Tucker Carlson told his producer, Sidney Powell is lying. She's a bleeping bit. Sean Hannity said they're bleeping lunatics on the actual fraud theories. Tucker Carlson, again, I hate him, meaning Donald Trump passionately. There really isn't an insight to Trump and isn't an upside to Trump. So this is what they were saying privately. When they had this lawsuit and discovery they were able to look at all these DMs they had to one another, and the things they were saying on the air were not the same things that they were saying to one another privately. They knew they were lying, but they were lying as a business decision. So what they told viewers is Carlson repeatedly platformed Powell's election fraud claims on his primetime show, even though that he knew she was lying. The whole narrative that Sidney was pushing, I did not believe it for 1 second. He said this in a deposition, not on air. What he did say on air is Donald Trump may be the greatest president that ever will be. I'm sorry, the whole narrative that Sidney was pushing, I did not believe it for 1 second. I think that's what Sean Hannity said. All right. So Tucker Carlson's producer said, it is so insane, but our viewers believe it. So addressing again how her stupid Venezuela affidavit isn't proof might insult them. So they know it's insane. They knew it was insane. They knew the audience believed it. And they chose not to correct them because correction would cost viewers. It came to a choice between reporting the evidence, reporting the actual news, and just telling Fox viewers what they wanted to hear. And they chose the latter. All right. This is what I'm saying is a difference between leaning and bias. Their bias was not, in this case, wasn't necessarily right-wing bias. It was money bias. They chose the money over the truth. It was about commerce, not ideology. Do you follow me? They were in it for the money, not for the reporting. So let me just. Fox News broadcasts false claims because it hosts are ideologically committed conservatives who genuinely believe they're helping their side. That's what we think, right? That's how we want to present it. But that's not what they're doing. And I'd say it got worse after that. It was bad. But I think 2020, I started thinking about that. I was looking at this a little bit. And I was thinking about 2012 versus 2020. In 2012, Karl Rove was on the network as an advisor, right? And they were announcing the results as they came in. And they declared Ohio for Obama. And Karl Rove lost his marbles. And he was insisting that it was too early to call Ohio. So Megyn Kelly, that Megyn Kelly, the Megyn Kelly of Santa Claus's Wife fame, the one that said, it's not pedophilia if they're 15. That one, yeah. She walked across the Fox studio and down the hall, and she went into the statistics people and, asked, why are you calling it early? And they explained to her that the districts that were left were places like Cleveland, and there was no way that Romney could pick up those votes, that the majority of the votes left were likely for Obama. And then, of course, they ended up being right. And then Rove later on in the show, said he was wrong. But I'm just, compare 2012 to 2020. And what happened in the aftermath of 2020. They went from being just a right-leaning network to being we're just going to tell what our viewers what they want to hear, regardless if it's true or not. Okay. All right. I don't need to kick my shoes off. I can't concentrate. Oh, I think I need to kick my shoes off. All right. Nice seeing you, Brett. It's quite alarming that major news is not giving over blue butterfly zones in the concentration camps in Texas. Major news didn't talk about Linda Davis and so many others. I don't know about Linda Davis. There is something about that too, like what news talks about and what news doesn't talk about, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. In the different contexts. So I think we've established that a lot of these, I think we've established that Fox News lied to us on a regular basis. Let's not, like OAN, let's not make everybody guilty of what Fox News did. As far as I know, of the major networks, the only one that lied to us about the election was Fox News. I'm not counting like Newsmax and OAN as actual news networks. It's insane almost how much dissonance it takes to make a Fox News host. Yes. I don't have the channel on. It's not about whether or not I watch Fox News. It is about media bias. And people want to conflate what Fox News does with what MSNBC does. And I'm not like CNN is not really a political network as far as I'm concerned. CNN is a sensationalist network. I think MSNBC is a political network, but MSNBC is a left-leaning political network versus Fox News being a right bias political network. And I'm distinguishing between a bias and a leaning. Bias, when you have to say things that are untrue in order to support your position. A bias is when actual reality can't reframe your position. This wasn't an aberration. It was the system working exactly as designed. When truth cost viewers, Fox called Arizona correctly and their audience fled. The lesson they drew was not our audience trusts us. It was our audience will punish us for accuracy. So the business model most rewarded false claims. People are going to go where they want to go when the cognitive dissonance kicks in. Then when they started lying, when Fox News started lying, the viewers started coming back. The cost, this kind of market bias created was that millions of Americans lost faith in their election. You still have people, a significant percentage of the population, that believes that the elections were stolen, even though it just wasn't. It just wasn't. There's no facts behind that at all. Even when I see people like try and argue, people will even get their facts about the wrong facts wrong. Like people, where did the 15 million votes go? As though like 15 million fewer people voted for Kamala Harris than it was actually only about 6 million more people voted for Biden than Harris, not 15 million. And some of that was probably due to the election laws changing, and some of it was due to people on the left not wanting to come out and vote for Harris because of the whole Israeli war. So both lean, but leaning doesn't equal distortion. I'm not saying that MSNBC does not lean left. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm saying MSNBC doesn't have a chronic history of just lying to keep viewers. So like, if you think of it, you're driving down the street and one person might drift left occasionally and gets a little sleepy at the wheel and then tugs back into the road. The other one is just goes completely off the road. All right. So Fox News is going completely off the road. MSNBC sometimes gets a little sleepy behind the wheel. And I'm just saying this based on actual history of lawsuits and whatnot. MSNBC hasn't lost nearly $1 billion lawsuits on just making stuff up. And MSNBC didn't make up the single biggest fake news in news history. Fox News did. There's nothing on par with what Fox News did that MSNBC has ever done. Broad subscriptions. So the old model used to be broad subscriptions and classified newspapers. So the classified newspapers didn't care what article you read. There was no way of knowing. You could, you were in the paper, and if you were writing for the paper for 30 years, you had 30 years of experience. Doesn't matter if anybody ever read your articles or not. You were a veteran. You were a seasoned reporter. You might be a crappy reporter, but you're a seasoned reporter. When we got into the internet age, there was a shift. All of a sudden, there was a thing where people can measure whether or not they read what you said, whether or not they watched your videos, whether or not they, actually clicked on your articles. All of those things were suddenly measurables. And when that happened, there was a huge shift from well thought out, articulated, substantive news to clickbait. We call it clickbait. Why? Because it is bait. People click on clickbait. If you really have an issue with biased news in any direction, stop clicking on clickbait. That's one big thing. Every time you click on clickbait, you're rewarding sensationalism. So the amygdala responds faster to threat than reassurance. There's also this kind of model. Why do you think you watch Fox News? And like my wife, she has an uncle. We don't watch that channel. But she has an uncle that's all he does. She goes to visit, and he just has it on all day long, every day, like just steady rhythmic Fox News propaganda pumping through her brain. And so she was there for a few days. And it's not like she came back a Republican or whatever, but she was telling me that just after a while, it just starts to, you're just angry. And, you just start to have all these bad feelings and stuff just from osmosis. And that's what that is. That's the hatred. That's the anger. That's the fear. Trans people are going to get you. Oh, look at all those trans people. They're coming for you. All that kind of crap. All that hate mongering. It's there for a reason. It's because that results in clicks. It's because that results in paychecks. So that's what I call the sensationalist bias. And so, let's think about some things, right? Missing emails, right? Remember the missing emails, butter emails. Here's the thing nobody talks about with the missing emails. There weren't any missing emails. Every single email ever sent. I know this is going to shock you if you've never processed this thought all the way out. But did you know that every single email that ever gets sent is on 2 computers? Right? Two. You can't send an email and not have it opened up somewhere. And so all the emails that were so-called missing emails from Hillary Clinton's computer to the State Department were also on the State Department hard drives. Every single missing email was not missing. But no, the media can't talk about that. They can't explain that's how email works. You got half a conservatopia sitting there thinking that there's all these missing emails, that she bleached them, that she wrecked her phones, that she did all of this stuff that actually were consistent with policy. There were no missing emails, but that doesn't get the clicks. That doesn't get the paychecks. How about Biden crime family? You ever try to pin somebody down on exactly what crime the Biden crime family committed? And then just, well, something to do with Russia and China, and not Russia, Ukraine and China. And they got, this whole network with, people he knew that were making all of this money, and Hunter Biden had a job and a laptop. There's nothing there verified. They can't tell you what the single crime is. But boy, did Biden crime family live on Fox News for 4 years. And then how about the Americans crushed by Biden's economy? There was worldwide inflation going on, and it was lower in the U.S. than most countries, especially most of the developed countries. If you go and you look at the CBO report from 2020, after all of the jobs were lost during the pandemic, they were saying, if you read it, because this is when the one guy that was asking, what do you do to research? Well, I went and I read the CBO report from 2020. When were jobs supposed to be recovered? And they were saying if unemployment got down to 6% by 2024, that would be the most realistic measure. Nobody thought it was going to be back below 4% by the end of the year. But that's where Biden got it. And then you've got to think about this all the way through. They blame him for inflation, but then they say the jobs just came back all on their own. But those two things are not consistent. Because the reason you would blame him for inflation is for him supercharging the economy through his stimulus package, which would get the jobs. Then those jobs go out and they spend all this money they got, which is what generates the inflation. It's impossible for his stimulation to cause inflation unless it created jobs. But they wanted to take away credit for his jobs. And if you looked at the fact checks, they would say, well, some of those jobs were just coming back. They were just jobs lost due to the pandemic. And then they would ignore that the inflation was also due to the pandemic. The way that the media covered the whole inflation thing was biased because it was sensational. It's you get more clicks, you get more reads, you get more views, you get more eyes on the TV set when you're talking about Biden's inflation than when you're talking about Biden managing inflation. Nobody ever asked Republicans what they were going to do about it. Never saw one question where Donald Trump said what he was going to do about inflation. His answer to inflation was to raise tariffs. And nobody would sit there and point out, Donald, that raises prices. That should have been the talking point instead of Biden's inflation. The talking point should have been Donald Trump went to Wharton and he doesn't know how tariffs work. But that doesn't get the clicks. What the actual news was is that the United States managed the post-pandemic recovery better than any country in the world. But we never heard that. Those weren't the news articles. And then you go back to the missing the emails thing. As much as that was reported, the actual irony is that the way that the Republicans make it sound is that the whole Russia scandal was something that was made up by the Democrats so that if Trump won, they could undermine his presidency. As though that makes any sense at all. The Butter emails scandal was just nonstop, and we never heard a peep about Trump and Russia. Why wouldn't they just, if this was their whole thing, and James Comey was all anti-Trump and pro-Hillary Clinton, why did Comey have a press conference announcing the reopening of Hillary Clinton's investigation a week before the election and not ever talk about how there was an investigation going on with Trump and Russia? How come? Like an honest question. We talk about media being liberal. Media is sensationalist. People loved to hate Hillary Clinton. That's why they sold it. The actual news was ignored, and what we got was sensationalism. So that's the, like, sensationalism is its own bias. I forgot I had. So Clinton's email coverage exceeded all of her there was more articles about Hillary Clinton's emails than all of her policy combined. New York Times' own public editor coverage of Clinton emails was relentless, while Russia pursuit was timid. Harvard Schortenstein Center: Clinton's bad press outpaced good press 64% to 36%. Columbia Journal, and remember, Hillary Clinton had like 30 years of negative coverage about her. It didn't just start when she ran for president. I remember, like, Bill Clinton, when he spoke at her thing, he said at her inauguration, not her inauguration, her nomination, he said that the Republicans had made a caricature of Hillary Clinton. And that's what they did. They ran against the caricature. And the media never actually reported on her actual character. Her actual character was actually very opposite of what the caricature was. There was one editorial I read that was one of the few positive things about her that I read, was a guy in New York from when she was senator, and he had some problems getting he had some issues with his health insurance. So he called the senator's office to see if he could get some help from them. And then Hillary was in the office and heard her assistant talking to the guy. And so she said, "Here, give me the phone." And she talked to him. And for about 10 minutes, kind of figured out what's going on. She said, "Let me get back to you tomorrow." And so she writes down his number and stuff. And then, next day, the guy's like thinking that, maybe her office would call him. Next day, he answers the phone and it's like, "Hi, this is Hillary." And it was her calling him back personally. And she's like, "Okay, so I got this all worked out. You want to call the hospital? You want to talk to this doctor? And, tell him you spoke to me. And, you're the guy we talked about." And he called the doctor and he got all his insurance stuff taken care of and everything. That's not the Hillary Clinton that you hear about in the press. She didn't release a press report. He wrote about this like a decade after it happened. Because he just got tired of all the negative press about her and how all this stuff about how she was this terrible person. And so he's like, "Let me tell you about my interaction with Hillary Clinton." All right. So, but we know who she was because for 35 years, we've allowed the right-wing media to define her for us. And even, anyway, what we actually know versus what was claimed. Okay, so what about the Hunter Biden story? This is one of the favorite things that the right wing uses to talk about liberal bias. All right, hang on. All right. Stimulus package. Are you going double entendre on us there? Dusty, I don't know who in the world you could say. Remember when Biden said that he had nothing to do with the... I have no idea what you're talking about, nor do I care. Both sides are evil, just one side is more evil. Denton, like Biden, has statistically speaking, he was better for the economy than Trump and helped us recover from COVID. He did. I don't know how in the world you could say that, but it's okay. It's your opinion. Well, I mean, then it's not about whether or not anybody says it. It's just true. Inflation, at the time that Biden left office, inflation had come all the way down. GDP growth was faster. Unemployment was lower. Jobs were being created at a higher rate. He actually inherited a crappy economy and made it into a good one. Trump has inherited a good economy and he's made it into a crappy one. I save all my receipts, every grocery to compare. I disagree. Things have definitely gone way higher. And I think it depends on what you're talking about there. Definitely grocery prices have gone up. Out there with being a silly belly, little rage baiter with no actual positions. Trump had years in office during which, technically this is his 5th year. And it's his 5th year. I mean, 2022 was at the end of Biden's first. And anyway, you're missing the whole point about the whole thing. Inflation under Biden was not Biden's fault. Inflation under Biden was COVID's fault. Why is it that people give Trump a pass on COVID, but not Biden? COVID was at its peak when the day that Biden was inaugurated. Do you think it just went away and all the impact of COVID just disappeared because Biden got inaugurated? Have you considered the fact that there could be some overlap in the space-time continuum? I thought we weren't talking about politics tonight. We're talking about media. We're talking about media bias. All right. I was looking at Pokemon cards. I think I accidentally may. Oh, hey. Was he also the one who said Trump had only been in 1 year and that's wrong? He said 5, and winch prices went up. And this is like, I would like to make a big distinction about when prices went up under Biden and prices going up in the first year under Trump. When prices went up under Biden, that was because of COVID. There were 3 primary reasons. The first reason and the biggest reason was the supply chain shortages caused by COVID. The second big reason was the war in Ukraine cutting the world's oil supplies, which raised the price of energy, raised the price of oil worldwide, which raised the price of energy worldwide. We actually, believe it or not, I mean, Republicans have their whole alternate world where Biden somehow stopped oil drilling or something like that because he stopped one pipeline from being built. But actually, oil production went up under Biden, not down. When Biden was president, we were actually producing record oil. And if he were Donald Trump, he would be tweeting about it. He would have been tweeting about it all the time. We had actually record oil production, record energy production, because not only did oil go up, wind went up, and solar went up. We produced more energy under Biden than any time in U.S. history. So, you know, there's that. The oil under Ukraine with the Ukraine war, which, by the way, Putin started, not Joe Biden. I know that's hard for you to understand. But then the third thing was there probably was some impact from the stimulus package. There you go, Dad. There you go, Kitty. Said stimulus package just for you. So Biden's Biden's stimulus package revved up the economy, and that is what stimulus packages are meant to do. And so that probably did affect inflation a little bit. The other thing that affected inflation was inflation. And you have you had corporations that are like, well, prices are going up anyway, let's just raise them up even more, just so we can get away with it. And that's one of the things that Kamala Harris was trying to run against. You have situations where there are some industries now where there are so few people that control so much of the industry that they can basically just get together in a room and agree to raise prices together, which is what they did. So there was that too. Only one of those things was anything that would be Biden's fault, but even the one thing that was Biden's fault, you also have to give him credit for the jobs for. So anyway. The difference between that and what Trump is doing is Trump literally just directly raised prices when he put this tariff on us, and 90% of that tariff was passed on to consumers. Joe Biden didn't make a choice to raise prices. Donald Trump did. The inflation under Biden was not the goal. Inflation under Trump is like he literally the goal of tariffs, and he brags about how much money he's raised. Basically, he's bragging about how much money he's caused prices to go up. So now we're going to go into the Hunter thing. You're right. Now we're going into the Hunter thing. All right. One of the favorite things when the right wants to talk about media bias, they love to talk about how the left buried the Hunter Biden laptop story. First of all, I never voted for Hunter Biden. I don't care about Hunter Biden. Nobody I know's voted for Hunter Biden. And not one single person that I have ever talked to said, if I had known more about Hunter Biden's laptop, I would have voted for Donald Trump instead of Hunter Biden. The only people that care about Hunter Biden's laptop are people that voted for Donald Trump. All right, so first, let's just get that out of the way. What do we actually know about Hunter Biden's laptop? Because I hear all kinds of people that, say that it proved to be real. It didn't actually prove to be real. What proved to be real is some of the information on it proved to be real. There's a hard drive that exists somewhere in the FBI that is alleged to have come from Hunter Biden's laptop. Whether or not it's never been disproven and it's never been proven that Hunter Biden actually dropped off that laptop. What we have is the testimony of a blind guy who thought that maybe later on he thought maybe it was Hunter Biden. We don't really have any evidence that it ever belonged to Hunter Biden. There was also, back in the same time frame, up ahead of it, there was back, after 2016, as far as back as 16, there was 2016, there was people that were alleging they had information on, they had dirt on Hunter Biden that was being shopped around on the black market. And whether or not that information, that the reason that one of the reasons people were reluctant to pick up the story is because of that information being shopped on the black market in Russia, and because of in 2016 the Russian attempt to interfere with the election. So then the New York Post would not let any other newspapers verify what they said. Nobody else was allowed access to the blacktop or to the laptop or to the hard drive or anything else like that. Everybody else just had to take the New York Post word for it. And the New York Post is not the most credible news organization. There was an email that had the words the big guy emailed to Hunter Biden, but he didn't email it. It was somebody sent it to him. There was never an actual deal made. I can email you something and says, talk to the big guy. Hunter Biden says he doesn't know what the guy was talking about when he said, talk to the big guy. This was not like some kind of lingo they had together. So the reality is there is a lot of legitimate stuff on the laptop that implicates Hunter Biden and a lot of highly immoral things. I don't know if all the, I don't know what's true on there and what's not. I know that they verified some of the emails, some of the information on there, but the same people that verified it said they couldn't verify everything on it. And the same people that verified it also said that, it looked to them like this had been cobbled together. Like it wasn't like the way the data was organized wasn't like it was from a single original hard drive, but it was compiled. There were like too many different meta signatures or whatever computer talk. So I believe there was a hard drive that was in a laptop that was dropped off at this guy's shop, but they just happened to drop it off at a blind guy's shop that happened to know Rudy Giuliani and Hunter Biden, who doesn't even live there, goes all the way over there and just drops off this random laptop and totally forgets about it, even though it has all this incriminating information about him on it. Which is more, Occam's razor here. Which is more believable? Somebody bought that information that was available to, that was being sold on the black market, put it on a laptop and dropped it off to a guy that they knew Rudy Giuliani, or that Hunter Biden, dropped off this basic confession of crimes and forgot about it. And didn't just drop it off, drove out of his way across state lines and stuff. And all of this is, it's just fodder for the right. They have just been chewing on this thing for 5 years. As though if the Hunter Biden story, if we only knew the truth about the Hunter Biden story, nobody would have voted for Joe Biden. So sorry, Gary, I'm pretty much all I do is politics on this show, so it's a political show. Of course, the files are filled with the topics they used to have to make up. No, my biased, Kevin. I haven't seen bashing. This is legitimately documented in NBC and Fox. We don't like any of these guys. No, I'm not dismissing allegations against Biden. There are no allegations against Biden to dismiss. All there is just rhetoric. There's no actual allegation. There is not a thing that Joe Biden has actually been accused of doing. And I'm not dismissing allegations against Trump, or I'm not dismissing allegations against Trump. He was indicted 4 times by 4 different grand juries. There are millions of pages of evidence against him. There are actual crimes he committed. There are actual crimes he has been convicted of. There is not a single actual crime that Joe Biden has even been accused of. You want to have it tit for tat. This is what I'm talking about, Kevin, when I talk about bias versus leaning. I'm not being biased here. I admit I have a liberal leaning, but I'm not being biased. I'm stating things based on facts. Your bias is preventing you from hearing the facts. Your bias rejects the facts. That's cognitive rejection, not even cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance implies there's some kind of uncomfortable feeling between the world that is being presented to you and the world that you think it is. And so it causes you to consider. That would be a good thing for you. But you're rejecting out of hand actual substantive facts because they disagree with your worldview. That, my friend, is bias. That's why it's important to have these discussions and understand what the distinction is. A jury found President Trump liable for sexual abuse in 2023. He was ordered to pay millions. The ruling was already upheld in appeals court. The case is over. He was also convicted of crimes. Was the laptop investigated? No. I mean, it depends on what you mean. What do you mean, was the laptop investigated? The FBI had it. FBI still has it. What do you mean it was? What would the laptop be investigated for? There's never been any evidence offered. What happened is copies of the laptop were delivered. Eventually the Washington Post and the New York Times both got copies of the laptop, and then they had computer forensics people take a look at the laptop copies, the copies of the discs, and they found things on there that were consistent with they found some of the emails, not all of them, not even the majority of them. It was only like a few percent of them that were authenticated. And they said in the same article, they couldn't verify most of the stuff on the laptop. They couldn't verify that disk drive came from a single laptop. So but some of the emails were verified to have actually been sent to or from Hunter Biden's actual email account. And even then they said, that's not to say that somebody couldn't have hacked his email account. So if somebody hacks your email account and sends an email from your email account, that does not mean you sent an email. That means an email was sent from your email account. But even with that, the blind computer shop owner says that stuff was added to it that wasn't in it before. The part that somebody somewhere added stuff to the files after he turned it over to the FBI. So what needs to be investigated is why is somebody in the FBI manipulating that evidence? That should be the question that's being asked. I wish Trump wasn't the only president who was found guilty of felonies in a criminal trial. Wonder if he can get retribution on all 12 of those jurors who found him guilty. He'll probably try. Election fraud. He's not allowing facts to overcome his feelings. Facts don't care about your feelings, but they sure do care about mine. Maybe Trump can find a way to get even with 9 jurors who found him liable for sexual abuse in 2023. What about all the grand jurors that indicted him? I wonder if he's going to go after them too. I think I read, even in all the grand jury indictments, like out of all the jurors that heard any of his case, the grand jurors and the actual jurors, I think only one grand juror in the 4 trials, the 4 indictments, only one grand juror total even had an issue with any of the indictments. Like the evidence on the 2 Jack Smith case were just overwhelming. Like, have you read the indictments? There was just a cluster fornication of evidence. There are Democrats that do fraud like Gavin Newsom. The Trump DOJ, if they have these files, they could release them just like the Epstein files. I don't enjoy listening to you bash the president, bash these other people, and never say anything bad about. I've said bad things about the Democrats, but I'm not going to try and pretend like Donald Trump and Joe Biden are orgy of evidence. Is that what you want me to say? There was an orgy of evidence. That's what Kitty wanted me to say. That it's not a cluster fornication; it's an orgy. I mean, I'm still I stand by what I say, Gary. I'm saying things that are true. It's not bashing the president. It's criticizing a criminal. Because I'm talking about media bias. So I'm talking about the history of things in the media and how they were presented by the media to show you that the liberal media is a myth. Just, like, can you slow down your brain a little bit and think about what I'm saying, please, Gary? Like, just think, am I saying anything unfair about Trump? Am I saying anything wrong? Am I saying anything incorrect? If I'm saying anything incorrect, then you can say I'm being unfair. But this, again, I'm talking about bias, not leaning. You can have actual criticism of Joe Biden. Like, some people will criticize Joe Biden to a point I agree, for his reaction to Israel and funding Israel to go do genocide in Gaza. Some people criticize Biden for what happened for the Afghanistan pullout. I don't criticize him because I've looked at it. I don't think that it's fair to criticize him for it. I think that there were just a lot of really, really ugly things he could do. And he went with the least problematic of all of them. There was no easy way out. That is, few American soldiers died in the pullout. And I've looked at, like, if he were to have kept the air station open or whatever, if he had tried different alternatives that have been suggested, every one of those would have more than likely ended up in a lot more Americans dying than died in the one terrorist attack. But I'm all open for being, for fair criticism. I'm all open for, like a fact-based conversation. But just, you're being mean to Trump is not an accurate criticism or a good good starting place for an actual argument. It's also important to understand digital media is so easy to manipulate that it doesn't need to hold up in court. Even when real, it's unfortunate, but not reality. Screenshots are not usually permissible. You should read, check out Kitty had a Kitty has a Substack, and she talked about collecting evidence and screenshots just today. She has a good Substack. You want to say anything about that, Kitty? No? Okay. Anyway, reader Substack. Kitty's happy I read her Substack. Jack Smith was duly appointed. Yeah. I mean, like, this is like, you're like, does Jack Smith being appointed, did that change anything for you, Kevin? Like, did Jack Smith being appointed to investigate January 6th mean January 6th didn't happen? Does Jack Smith being appointed to investigate the fact that Donald Trump stole classified documents and nuclear secrets, does that mean he didn't change that? Like, this is such a cop-out, dude. Be honest. You want me to be honest? You be honest. That's a dishonest question because it doesn't change anything. And all of this old history, well, I just told you. I'm not going over it over and over again. See, Gary, why don't you really ask yourself that question instead of me? Why don't you consider why I'm going over it over and again? Why don't you think about it? Because I'm being pretty clear about why I'm going over it. Sorry, I should say misappropriation of funds. I'm sure it's only a matter of time before Trump invents some sort of reason to go after Gavin Newsom. And I'm not, like, Gavin Newsom is not my first choice for anything. But Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump are not two sides of the same coin. There is no left counter to Donald Trump. They always want to make it like there's, there's got to be a left extremist to every right extremist. Donald Trump is on his own. There's no left alternative to Donald Trump. One is in office, one isn't. True. But you have to post. Agree. I am pissed about Biden supported the genocide. I am not a fan of the man. Yeah, a lot of people feel like a big criticism of Donald Trump, or not Donald Trump, of Joe Biden and Merrick Garland, is that they didn't go after Donald Trump soon enough. Like, they didn't weaponize the Justice Department. They went so far out of their way to not weaponize the Justice Department that justice did not get done. The single biggest crime against the American government in our entire history, he got away with it. The president of the United States tried to overthrow our country, and he failed, but he got away with it. In Brazil, when the guy did that, he went directly to jail and did not collect $200. He didn't pass go. When the South Korean guy tried a coup, no go, no $200, directly to jail. What we should have done is just put him in jail that first year, put him on trial, and send him to jail where he belongs. Merrick Garland screwed that up. I agree with that. Or at least, like, day one. I think a special prosecutor has to be appointed by the Attorney General. Day one, Merrick Garland should have appointed a special prosecutor. And just to make what's his name happy, had him be somebody that's Senate approved. I think he also waited too long to, yeah. I think Democrats tend to try too hard to be bipartisan. you can't compromise with people who are compromised. I mean, you can't compromise. Like when one side, when you've got one side of the war is Russia and one side of the Senate is Russian whores, you don't compromise with the Russian whores to get peace for Ukraine. Hola. I am not a fan of how he handled the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think yeah, that one I looked at every which way. I was like, what are all the different alternatives he had that were provided by, you know, his generals? And even his generals that disagreed with him said, probably in the long run, because if he had done something like try to keep the base or whatever, like that's the big thing that people say, well, he should have kept the Air Force base. But that would have set in motion a chain of event. Like he would have actually had to send people back in, which would have triggered more violence from the Taliban that Donald Trump let go. And so that would probably have actually escalated things. And then once that escalated things, then Biden would have had no choice but to send in more troops and basically reset the whole thing. I have yet to, like, if somebody ever presents me a better way to respond, like something he could have done that's better, like I looked at every way the generals offered and none of them pan out. But I don't see why it's, you see, I think what you're confusing, Gary, and I really want you to understand this. I am not biased. If you have a fact that that contradicts what I'm saying, my bias, if I will always abide by the facts. But I'm not being biased if I agree with facts that you don't like. That is a bias in you that is rejecting what you hear because of your bias, not because of my bias. Thank you. Yeah, I think so too. And that's actually, of course, this one, boy, this one is, I have major issues with the executive branch assuming more and more authority from the Constitution because the legislative branch keeps conceding it by not doing their job. Donald Trump didn't do that. He was willing. No, he wasn't, Kevin. Read. Donald Trump didn't. Donald Trump literally signed his name. He signed his own name saying that he had given all of the documents back, when at the same time there is video of him telling people that work for him to hide boxes. He did not work with them to give them all back. That's a lie. I'm not saying you're lying. I'm saying you are repeating a lie that has been debunked and that was in the actual indictment. Read the indictments. Host, prove your facts. What facts would you like me to prove, Kendall? What am I saying that's not true? I loved Obama for many reasons, but I think Hillary failed in her role as Secretary of State. Obama should have hired a stronger foreign relations person, since she is mostly America for. Maybe I'll pop over there. I checked out that website. I thought Substack was only an app, but it has a browser. Yippee, yeah. You can find my the Punt Stack is on there too. So if you want to follow me, I'm on Substack. Okay, that's fine. Great. I mean, like, you could just challenge yourself to learn something. Anybody can say anything. Well, I bet I'm stating facts. You feel free to disagree. Okay. Thanks, Gary. I hope you have a good day. South Korea ex-president got life. Am I falling behind again? How far behind am I? 6 minutes. Put him on trial for what? For the things he was indicted for, Kendall. Who wants to hear about these topics? All right. So let's. On FBI. No, there's no such, again, non-biased. There is such a thing as, again, I want to emphasize this. Bias is an unfair leaning, is unfair. What you're saying is that nobody can be fair. No, there are leanings. I would agree that there's no such thing as everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a leaning. But people can have honest leanings and people can have dishonest leanings. Why do you keep asking the same question over and over? I've answered it. I know it's crazy in high fidelity images and mostly small letters most days, but I'm managing on website and illustration and writing while keeping everything factual as possible is no small feat. Okay. They're in the indictment, Kendall. Go ahead and read the indictment. I'm not going to read the indictment to you on my show. I mean, it's there for you to read. I'm not like that. He was indicted is a fact that you can just Google it. Inflation hit so now let's talk about Biden's economy. The soft landing, nobody reported. Nobody talked about the actual economy under Biden. There was a global economy. Inflation hit every major economy post-COVID. It hit UK, it hit the Eurozone, it hit Canada, it hit Australia. All the comparable world had worse inflation, worse economies than we did. Most economists predicted a recession. It didn't happen. We never went into a recession. We didn't. Republicans that would have you believe that the economy was like worse than it was in the 80s. We had the best economy in the world. The media did not report that. You cannot argue spending. So then, like I was saying earlier, you can't spend. There's an inherent internal contradiction. You cannot argue spending drove inflation and didn't create real jobs at the same time, because the only way that spending could cause inflation was if spending created those jobs. So it's like they want to give Joe Biden blame for the inflation, but they don't want to give him credit for the jobs. It's impossible. The false framing, affordability was a cudgel against Biden. Nobody asked Republicans what they would do about it. Never once heard any Republican. I heard all kinds of Republicans complain constantly about inflation. Constantly. Never once said anything about what they were going to do about it. Not one thing. And they still won't talk about what they're going to do about it. They just going to wait until it comes down and pretend like they did something. What have they done for inflation? What have they suggested for inflation? They haven't done anything or suggested anything. Tariffs? Consumer sentiment was more negative than indicators warranted. Researchers documented it. Media ignored their own story. It was just the airwaves were so filled with constant negativity about inflation and the economy and how we were going to go for a recession that people felt like the economy was worse than it actually was. Tariffs are consumer. Now tariffs as a solution. This is, to me, the peak irony that shows exactly how the media just completely screwed up. Is that they voted for a guy, like when they say, I voted for this, they did vote for this. They voted for tariffs. They voted for tariffs to solve inflation. That's like trying to fix a scratch with a shotgun and then wondering why you blew your hand off. The day after the election, the number one Google thing was about, do tariffs raise prices? The media did such a crappy job that people that voted for Trump didn't even know how tariffs worked. The media's job is to inform, and they didn't inform. So the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to this bias is, so we've talked about bias versus leaning. Like, just having an opinion does not mean you have a bias. I talked about bias versus information. Like, information, you can have a left-leaning or a right-leaning, and you can base it on information. Neither way is that necessarily a bias. When you start ignoring facts and when you start making up facts, that's when it becomes bias. So like when you say, oh, where was Donald Trump stealing documents? And so there's not like an actual indictment that you can't actually read that has actual pictures of it and has actual details about all the stuff that happened. The facts are there. If you don't believe them, go read the indictment. Don't sit there and put your fingers in your ear and yell about Jack Smith. The facts don't change. The facts are there. If you don't know them, don't blame me. Learn them. Learn what the facts are. Obliviousness is not an argument. It's an excuse. And a poor one at that. So there's that. The last bias I want to talk about is owner bias versus reporter bias. Sometimes you have a bias by a reporter, and sometimes you'll have a leaning by a reporter, and sometimes you'll have an owner of a network or something that imposes their viewpoint on that media publication. So right now with Barry Weiss, for instance, and CBS wanted this whole Paramount merger to go through. So the Trump administration coerced them into making Barry Weiss the least qualified person in history to do what she is doing, into this role where she is now moderating what the whole, CBS network can and can't say. And it's like, just basically, that is government censorship, by the way. You've got Murdoch's at Fox News and the New York Post. You have Elon Musk at Twitter. It's not just regular media anymore. It's also social media. 80% of posts, political posts ahead of the election were right-leaning posts. And like on Twitter, it's not just speculative to me. I was averaging around 40 million impressions a month ahead of like in August. I think I got 40 million impressions. And September and October, I got like 10 million. My Twitter feed like dropped 75% in just a couple of months before the election. My Twitter feed. So I know, I'm not speaking hypothetically. I'm speaking my actual experience here. Just dropped through the floor, I should say. Dropped through the floor at a time when it should have been going up. And it's not like, oh, well, people just didn't like your account. People like that account enough to follow me in the first place. People follow me more than once. Elon was doing people the generosity of unfollowing me. I was shadow banned, and a lot of liberal Twitter people had the same thing. People I know, people we talk, some of the larger accounts communicate, and I'm not even that big of an account. I'm only like 75,000 on Twitter. But a lot of larger accounts that I personally verified with, their accounts dropped through the floor. So there's this media bias in the ownership. Individual journalists have viewpoints. This is real and documented, but reporters are more often constrained by editors, owners, and incentive structures than by their own politics. Most journalists try to be fair. The failures tend to be structural, not personal. Owner bias. For example, Bezos killed the editorial board for Washington Post wanted to endorse a candidate, and Jeff Bezos pulled that endorsement all by himself. Sure, he's the owner. He can do that. He's allowed. But don't tell me that the Washington Post has a liberal bias when the owner of it is refusing to let them even endorse a Democratic candidate. And nobody, see, reporters, they can get checked by their editors. Nobody can check Jeff Bezos. What are they going to do? Fire him as the owner? And now you've got, with fewer and fewer checks to ownership, the Epstein class owns the media. That is a really, really scary thing to think about. My facts are in the indictment, Kendall. Read the indictment. Just saying that I don't have facts over and over again does not mean that the indictment went away. Look at the indictment. Trump supporters can't. They can't. They just can't debate without lies, without denialism, without just like this craziness that somehow I just made up out of full cloth the idea that Donald Trump got indicted for stealing government documents. Like, that didn't really happen. Kitty's website is awesome. I love Kitty's website. Very, very informative. She's got a couple of them. You should check out Epstein Wiki too. That one's everything you ever want to know about the Epstein Wiki, Epstein files are there. It wasn't dismissed. It was withdrawn temporarily because Donald Trump is president. It didn't change the facts of the case. He still stole the documents. Why does that not bother you? The man, I want you to think about this, Kevin. I want you to think. If you can, please try and think. All right? Kitty, if you want to pop on and answer this question, you can, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. Remember when the tape came out where he was waving something in the writer's face that was like top secret plans? Do you remember what he was waving?
I don't remember what I don't off the top of my head remember what he was waving.
What he was waving and bragging about was that he was waving the war plans to invade Iran. He wanted to invade Iran so badly that he asked his generals to draw up war plans to do that. Then he bragged about it to this person who had no business knowing about it and waved the plans in front of her face. And even one of his legal people is like, uh-oh, we have a problem, right? But think about that. War plans to invade Iran. What does he want to do right now? Right?
He wants to invade Iran.
Do you think that this came up last week? Or do you think this came up 5 years ago?
Oh, no, this has been going on for a long time.
He's wanted to invade Iran since his first presidency. He wanted to invade Iran so badly in his first presidency that he literally drew up war plans. He had his generals draw up war plans to do just that.
Mm-hmm.
Just that. Kevin, that should bother you. That should bother you as an American citizen. That
especially someone running on an anti-war platform. He ran on an anti-war platform. No more wars.
No new wars. No new wars. Now it's invade Iran.
It's invade everywhere. Invade Iran, invade Venezuela, invade Cuba, invade Canada, invade Panama, invade Greenland.
Like Greenland. Everybody. I don't recall campaign commercials where he was saying, I promise you I will invade England or invade Greenland. Oh, Kevin says, it's no new forever words. Keyword forever. Yeah, well, that's some specious.
And this is the bitch that wants who's salty for not getting the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, yeah. Let's the irony there.
So anyway, we need to stop talking about a left bias versus a right bias.
A truth versus
we need to talk about sensationalist
bias. Fact biased.
Well, sensationalist bias. We need to stop rewarding sensationalism. We need to stop, just whatever gets the most clicks, whatever gets sensationalist.
That's how they make the money.
Yes.
Until we don't make news a commodity, it's just like healthcare. People can't afford healthcare because we make it a business. It's a capitalistic business. Same difference. Once you start incorporating greed, you're done. It's over.
So when we talk about bias, we need to talk about what is the actual bias here? Not left versus right. Is it sensationalism versus information? Are you actually trying to inform people, or are you trying to just sell papers like Kitty was just saying? We also got to look at, is this coming from the reporter, or is this coming from the owner of the news network? Is this, Fox News, not just Tucker Carlson or Judge Weinbach or, whatever. Not just the individual newscasters at Fox News, but the owner of Fox News made a decision that they would rather keep their viewers than to keep their viewers informed. That is a bias. Having a leaning is fine. I don't care if you are a right-leaning news network where you just present conservative issues and conservative news, but you do it honestly. The issue here is dishonesty. And that's why you've got people on here asking me to defend my claim that Donald Trump got indicted for actual crimes that are actually listed in the actual indictments. So anyway, that I think is that my last. Oh no, I still have. Reality has a this is the one quote that I always think of. Reality has a liberal bias. And I mean, like, you can go too far with that, but I've been saying that since before Stephen Colbert got, made it famous. But I've been saying that for over a decade now. The real questions: does the leaning produce distortion? Is the goal to inform or to activate? Who owns the microphone? Like, literally, who owns the microphone? What interest does silence serve? Like, not just what is being reported, but what is not being reported. So apparently you have people out there that, don't know that Donald Trump actually got indicted. Somehow, some way, they don't know the facts about why he was indicted or what he was indicted for, even though there was like an actual indictment. It was actually a very well-written indictment, both of them, by the way. And I read both of them. Well, all four of them, but the two that Jack Smith wrote that we were talking about are actually both very well written, very, very substantive based. You're also welcome to watch the testimony of Jack Smith. Like, these are not things that are made up. That's like asking me to prove the world is round or something. Like, it's on the internet. Look it up. Just read the indictments. So, anyway. I think that's it for today's show. Thanks for watching. Even you, Kevin, and where'd the other guy go? Kevin and Kendall, if you're still here. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. I don't know what I'll talk about yet, but I'll figure it out. And you're awesome, Kitty, as always. Everybody remember to go read her Substack.